Well, good morning. Today in the studio, I have joining me Matyas Fulop. Now, I have managed to pull this guy in one day before he zips back to Vietnam. He has been doing a flying tour of Australia. He's been here for about 7 days. Buddy, thanks for joining me.
Pleasure to be here.
Now, I've invited you on the show because you were actually you were suggested here. Now, I've known you for a long time, but Richard reached out to me, who does a bit of work with you, and said he's coming into town. You probably should try and get him on the show. So, we've managed to nail you down here. I've known you because of probably your involvement with Downshift has been how we first came about. And for those of you that don't know Downshift, you probably don't live in Southeast Queensland. But if you live in Southeast Queensland, it has been fundamental to the car scene for over a decade, I would have to say. And, Matty and his team were running a big event on Friday night. And, we've spent a lot of time running into each other at automotive events across that duration. But, I've also seen Matty build that business. I've watched him, lobbying government. I've watched him, working with police and, advocating for, in particular, car owners, car culture, car modification. But, that's only a small part of Matty's life. Mate, I am going to take this all the way back to when you were just a whippersnapper. Matty, what was it that first tickled your fancy about cars?
So I believe you've seen this, which is why you're asking the question. But basically, I grew up. So my childhood is in communist Hungary, and I remember there was this time that I think I was probably about 5 or 6. My dad went on a business trip to, I think it was Western Germany. And that was a big deal at the time, of course, because you've had the Iron Curtain, and to get out there, you had to have a really good reason. And I can't remember what the reason was that he went out there, but he got dispensation, essentially like a permit to go out to Western Germany, which was not in the communist bloc. And when he came back from that business trip, he brought a gift for me, which was a scale model of a Ferrari F40, about yay big, whatever that is, 1:24 sort of scale. And I didn't really have a passion or an interest for cars before that, but I certainly did after that. It was kind of like this work of art, and I had no idea that a car could look like this, or we had these horrible econo boxes in the Eastern Bloc, which were Trabants and Ladas and things like that. So my dad turns up with a Ferrari F40 in a clear crystal box, and so that kind of blew me away, and that really kickstarted my interest in cars.
Bit smarter than a Lada.
Yeah, just a little bit. We had a kind of like a morning pea yellow Dacia at one point, and him turning up with a bright red Ferrari F40 was a bit of a shock. So yeah.
And, sorry, how old were you then?
I think about 5 or 6, something like that. So pretty young.
Yeah, that would have blown your mind at that point.
It did, definitely.
And how long were you there? How long did you stay in Hungary?
So I lived there until I was 9 years old, and then I immigrated to Australia with my mum and dad. And that was really, really tough because I didn't speak any English, but I was still trying to do primary school. And when we first moved here, we kind of just moved into my uncle and aunt's place temporarily in Springbrook, which is, it's only like 3,000 people or something. And the primary and high school were combined together into one location, and it had 64 students total. And so the teacher that I had was also the principal, who was teaching like 3 grades at the same time. Plus on the side, he sort of took it upon himself to teach me English at the same time. And I remember like having all these like scrapbook after scrapbook, which had essentially like a tiny figure for a car, and it would be like picture of a car equals auto, which is the word in Hungarian for car. And so I just have like lines and lines and lines of like trying to like learn each word basically through drawing it in a scrapbook. So basically I was doing that. I like learning English, as well as doing the normal primary school curriculum. And then we ended up moving from there to Logan after a little while. So I lived there for a few years, and then eventually to Maruka, which is very close to the studio. So yeah.
Mate, that's wild. The experience of being a 9-year-old boy and changing countries. Like, what was it that sort of pushed your mum and dad to move? I mean, aside from the obvious, I'd rather sort of hear from you.
So my dad's younger brother was living here with his wife, and he came out to Australia to like visit them. And I guess his younger brother must have convinced them. So my uncle must have convinced him to that it's like a better location, that it's better economy, there's less corruption, it's maybe a better life, a better future for the entire family, I suppose. So yeah, I guess he must have taken that on board and had a conversation with my mum and decided to make that incredibly difficult step happen. Because I mean, leaving everything and everyone behind that and like we had a pretty reasonable life in Hungary, like we weren't like poor or anything like that. But like essentially selling everything and putting your life in 3 suitcases with your partner and your 9-year-old kid or 8-year-old kid at the time must have been incredibly difficult. Much more difficult for them compared to me, because obviously I didn't have any responsibilities. I had just had to survive.
And
yeah.
How do you remember that experience? I mean, what are your memories of how that was?
It was pretty weird. It was pretty strange. Generally it was like, I mean, moving into the rainforest in Springbrook, compared to sort of like a mid-tier city in Hungary, that was very different. Very different. I rode a bicycle to school down like a dirt road, essentially. And going to an Australian primary school with 64 students compared to like an 1,800 person primary school in Hungary. Yeah, that was very, very different.
And do you remember your mum and dad saying to you, like, hey, mate, we're moving to Australia? Like, do you recall that conversation and how that went?
Well, I didn't really know how to react to that. Like, I didn't know what that meant in the real world or in real life. It's like, the concept sounds cool. All right, let's do it. And of course, I trusted my parents completely that like they're making the right decision. They know what they're doing. So yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah.
And kids can be brutal. How did you find that time? Was that
complicated? Yeah, that was definitely complicated. I mean, like, I think a lot of people didn't particularly like me because I was an immigrant, or maybe because I was a little shit. I'm not sure. Entirely possible that it was a combination of both, but I guess I didn't really have both the language skills and maybe the self-awareness to realize that that's partly what it was. And so the first principal as well, he was incredibly kind to take me under his wing and teach me English and all of that. But he got substituted out about 6 months later, and we had another principal who hated me because I was an immigrant. And I didn't realize that that's why he hated me at the time. But about 10 years later, I figured it out that, like, what did I do to offend this person? And I felt horrible about, like, like I must be doing something wrong. I must be, messing things up. Yeah, nope, that wasn't the case. So yeah, so there was definitely some negativity, but then there was also positivity as well. And it was like I made friends and everything. And I remember I had this crush on this girl who was a couple of grades older than me, and so we hung out a few times, and she was really nice to me. So, that was kind of cool. Yeah.
How long do you think it took you to get a grasp of English to be able to communicate reasonably effectively?
Oh, probably. I mean, I could make myself understood probably within about a year, fairly well, but to sort of get the to get the fine details and the subtext of things, like, that took much longer. And certainly to get rid of my accent took many years. I would say probably like I've actually looked at some of my exercise books where I've like written things back from like grade 8 even, and that was still not perfect. In fact, when I went for an interview at Brisbane State High, because my mum really wanted to send me to the best public school there is in Brisbane, the reason they wouldn't take me is because my English wasn't good enough. So that's grade 7, essentially, which is 4 years later. Yeah, 4 years later.
Wow.
Yeah.
Because interestingly, and only knowing you in your adult life, you know, you come across as extremely eloquent. You know, I wouldn't have guessed that, you know, you came here not
speaking any
speaking
English.
any English.
I mean, I knew a couple of words like dog and cat and house and car. 1 to 10. That was it.
Yeah, that won't get you real far.
Yeah.
Far out. Okay, so schooling was obviously a bit of an uphill battle. Did it get better? Did you find?
Oh, it took a while. I mean, I remember, and I had a lot of pressure on me from my parents, who expected me to do really well. Like, I mean, I was incredibly good at primary school, like, you know, grades 1, 2, and 3 back in Hungary. But then coming to Australia, that kind of really dropped off quite quickly because I couldn't speak English, so it was difficult to learn the actual content. But I still had the pressure on me from my parents to perform really well, and you know, I remember my mum signed me up to like a Christmas poem recital one year in primary school, and like I remember like looking at this poem, and it was quite long, like it was like maybe like a whole page long, being like, I don't know what any of these words mean. How do you expect me to learn this thing? And she's like, well, you'll just have to learn it. And she sat with me and tried to help me, but I remember like the frustration of trying to learn this page of text that you don't understand what any of it means and memorize it. I mean, it was that was pretty bad. But you know, like I didn't have a choice. Like my mom was like, you have to do this. I've signed you up. So some parts of it were pretty tough. Yeah.
It does sound a bit brutal. And so as you came to the end of your schooling, you know, there tends to be a funneling towards, you know, further education, particularly here in Australia. What was that like? Where did that head?
So, I mean, like I went to McGregor High, and that was generally a pretty good experience. And from there, I sort of didn't really know what I wanted to do, but you know, the pressure or the idea was to go to like a good university. So I ended up going to University of Queensland and doing a Bachelor of Business Management. So the majors were international business and business economics, and so that was pretty good, but kind of in a silly way. Like I had a long-term girlfriend at the time, and so all I was doing really at university was I'd go to uni, I'd do the coursework, and then I would go and do my part-time job. And I had 2 of them at one point that were like debt collection and also telemarketing, which is both on the phone, but the very complete opposite kind of approaches. And then I would see her, and that would be the only thing I would do. So I didn't really do too much socializing or anything like that. And that was definitely a mistake in retrospect. But it is what it is. So anyway, so I did my university, and then after that, that kind of didn't really lead me towards any particular job. So I thought, you know, I'll try and I'll do some more specialization. So I ended up doing a Master of Business, and then after that, that took another 2 years, and then after that, I ended up getting a job for government and working in an office for sort of 6.5 years. And yeah, I guess that's a weird kind of thing. I didn't think that that's what I would, or looking back, it doesn't seem like the right kind of for me to do. But yeah,
that's a lot of study. Because I mean, to have done an undergrad and a and
a master's,
and a master's as well. Total, yeah. That's full commitment to your studies.
Yeah. I mean, it was 5 years. Yeah. So it was long enough.
And so jumping into the public service after that.
Yep.
How did you find that experience?
Scary, definitely scary. But I mean, I was blessed with a few very, very good bosses, directors, executive directors, who I guess liked it about me that I wasn't kind of like normal public sector sort of mold, that I was, I guess, like less conservative and a little more like off the cuff and let's get things done kind of thing. Yeah,
that's sort of what I think I'm alluding to here. Is you don't strike me as a man that would fit in the public service. Yeah.
No, so I was actually hired to be in a team that was trying to get rid of regulations that are placed upon business. So to try and make things more streamlined and easier for people to get things done versus just more regulation. Yeah, so I was doing that for a while, and then I got headhunted basically from there to work for Queensland Health and to try and improve the systems within Queensland Health to try and get like basically more patients through the system faster and in a more efficient way. So I did that for about 3.5 years or thereabouts. Yeah. So I guess that sort of role, that sort of team was more relevant to like people who just want to cut through the crap, essentially. Yeah,
because I mean that's a very corporate life.
Very.
there. And
It's a very
again,
corporate life.
yeah, the man I know now, they're
Not
heading the same way, but they're on very different paths. So I'm interested to know where that path shifted.
Okay, so actually, this is a bit of a more interesting story, I would say. So I had a supervisor who would sit about as far away from me in the office as what you are from me, and she was sort of like I think a 39-year-old ex-midwife, and quite conservative, lovely lady, but we kind of butted heads on a lot of things. She really wanted all the T's crossed and all the I's dotted, and I kind of just wanted to get on with it. Why aren't we implementing this yet? So we butted heads a lot, but we worked together for about a year and very closely because physical proximity as well as, I mean, she was my line manager essentially. But one day I come into the office and it's about 9:30 because I'd been at a meeting on site, and I come back in and no one's working on the floor. So there's about 200 people kind of just milling around, unsure of what to do. And I'm like, guys, what's going on? And they say, haven't you heard? Heard what? I only just arrived. Tell me what's up. And they say, it's Mary. So what about Mary? She was fine yesterday. Is she not at work? They're like, no, you don't know. And I'm like, just tell me. And the next minute, through the hallway, paramedics come wheeling her out on a stretcher plugged full of tubes. And the Royal Brisbane Hospital is across the street, so they would have arrived very quickly from just across the street. And I'm like shocked that this otherwise completely healthy lady that I had been working with for a year is on a stretcher. And I'm like, what happened? And so I've found, or they basically said she's had an aneurysm, she's had a bleed in the brain, and we don't think she's going to make it. And I'm like, how? She was completely fine yesterday. And they say, no, she was completely fine an hour ago when she was on the phone to a hospital site working on one of the policies that we're working with. And then literally mid phone call falls off the chair, no vital signs, no breathing, no circulation, no heartbeat, nothing. And so obviously they immediately called the ambulance, who rocked up very quickly and tried to sort of resuscitate and intubate and all of those things and ventilate and everything. Into ICU across the street, and but that was coming back to, I guess, like the story is, that was a real kick up the butt for me to be like, you don't know how long you've got left. If she can fall off the chair at the age of 39, which incidentally is how old I am now, from being like generally pretty healthy, like a normal person, what am I doing with my life? Am I happy to continue doing this in 10 years or 15 years or 20 years? Sure, it's maybe pretty easy and the money's good and I work with good people and generally the aim of what we're doing is good, but is this what I want to be doing at 40, 50? And I guess the answer was no. It's not what I want to be doing. And how am I going to spend this very limited thing that I have called time? And that was a real kind of like slap in the face to be like, oh my God, the actual thing that I'm limited by is time, and I don't know how much of it I've got. Is this what I want to do with my life? And the answer was no, it's not what I wanted to do. So basically, I exited the public sector a little while after that. It wasn't too long, but I'd already been running Downshift, the car events, for a little while, organizing those things for people who are sort of passionate about sports cars, especially Japanese sports cars. And at that time, I kind of like took that a lot more seriously because I was like, hey, people enjoy this. They come out every month. Maybe I should like actually like hire a venue and pay that money and pay the public liability insurance that they require and all the things. And yeah, so that's kind of how that kind of grew as a thing that, like, I was enjoying it anyway, but I thought, hey, like, if I take this more seriously, this is something that I could substitute like an office job with, doing something that I really enjoy, and can grow, and where I'm providing potentially even more value for people that I was in an office job in government.
Yeah, that's a pretty pivotal moment. And interestingly, from the story that I know going forward, that actually makes a lot of sense. I guess you had that moment of realization that, the path's pretty well set out. And if you don't make very active choices,
It'll steer you the way that it
yeah,
wants to.
mate, you'll just ride, and then you'll look around,
20 years later,
and go,
what
whoa,
happened?
whoa,
Yep, exactly. So
holy shit. Yeah, that's massive.
Mm.
Yeah. And I mean, did she survive? Did she, what was the aftermath?
So I think she spent something like 3 months in the ICU, being like plugged full of things, and the doctor said, like, she's brain dead. Like, there's no recovery from this. And interestingly, the family decided to essentially keep her alive, like keep her plugged in. And a lot of people were like, why? Like, why? Obviously not to the family, but like, what's the quality of life here? It's not great. Against all odds, she woke up. About 3 months down the line, she woke up, and I believe in the coming sort of 2 years, she did a bunch of rehab, and sort of started being able to like react to things again, and eventually even like speak again. But that's sort of where I sort of lost track of what happened. But it looked like she was actually very slowly, but making a recovery.
Wow.
Which incredible. Like, no one,
mate, brain aneurysm, that's pretty hard to come back from. Like, once that pops, that's generally game over. So that's
so
well, that's actually surprisingly positive. I actually didn't expect it to go that way. So that's,
neither did anyone else.
Far out.
Yeah. It was a pretty confronting thing that happened. Yeah,
it's a fairly brutal reminder that this is all finite.
Yeah, but I mean, in a twisted way, I guess it was good for me. It was kind of a slap in the face to be like, hey, what are you doing? Wake up. And yeah.
And how did you find yourself? How did you get involved with Downshift in the earliest days?
So I was part of an internet forum called JDM Style Tuning, which a gentleman from Sydney started many years before I sort of got into it. Justin Fox, his name is. And basically, I was just into cars, generally just into cars. And I was on that forum, and this is back in the day when forums were a thing rather than the social media. JDMST.
What's up?
Exactly. And so I kind of just, there was a Queensland section, and I kind of just put up, hey, does anyone want to hang out? And a couple of people wanted to hang out. So we ended up going down to Orange Grove Road, the shopping center on Orange Grove Road where Aldi is, and catching up with just a few people and shooting the shit basically on like a Wednesday night or something like that. And, it was fun. And I thought next month, I'm like, hey, why don't we do this again? And I put up another post, and 10 more people turned up. And then the next month, 10 more people turned up. And then it was like, like 30 people or something. And that's one of the oldest photos that I've got of that time is about, I think, 25 or 30 of us hanging out in that Aldi car park in on Orange Grove Road. And basically that it snowballed from there.
Do you remember what year that was? Where was that?
About 09.
09,
about 2009.
This is OG stuff here. This is before Facebook groups. People,
way before Facebook. Yeah. So,
mate, back when forums ruled the world.
Forums ruled the world. So the general places were sort of Pineland Shopping Centre, Milton McDonald's, and Riverside at West End.
Dude, that's
Computer Road at Yatla. I think maybe a lot of our viewers might, if you're into cars, you might know about these locations.
Well, that's it. If you know, you know. Riverside and a few of those. There'd be a few people that know, and then a few other people going, "What are you idiots talking about?"
Yeah. Exactly.
I remember. I didn't realize you were behind those at the time here in Queensland.
Deviant Teens.
Yeah, I remember the JDMST meets, and I remember them just like because they exploded. I remember those getting massive, and then again fell victim to their success.
Yeah. So that was me. I was running the JDMST things here in Queensland, and so that's where I started from.
And what, because again, I remember those getting massive and then getting shut down.
Yeah. So basically the issue was when we had sort of like 200, 250, 300 cars turning up to a shopping center car park, say in Callumvale, for example, on like a Tuesday or a Wednesday night at 8 p.m., all the shops were closed. And so when security saw things happening, they'd come up and, I'd go up and introduce myself and everything. And they'd essentially be like, well, what's going on? And then call the police immediately. And the police would come out, and I would go up and introduce myself and say, hey, like, I'm running this. As you can see, we're not doing anything illegal or bad, or we're not being antisocial. We're just hanging out and chatting in a shopping center car park. Half the time they would leave us alone, and they'd be like, all right, cool. We'll just make sure that that continues that way. And be like, sure, I'll do everything that I can. Here's my phone number. Call me if there's any problems. But then half the time they'd be like, well, it's private property, so you guys got to move. And it got to the point where, we'd have like 300 cars, and we'd get kicked out of a place. And then the next event, I'd say, I know we're going to get kicked out of here after like half an hour or 1 hour. So I've got a backup place. So we go to another car park. But with 300 cars, that's A, not ideal. And B, then you get kicked out of that place as well, because then now you're turning up at 9 or 10 p.m. to another shopping center car park, or like a Bunnings car park, and there's security there too. So eventually it was, we would get kicked out as a group. We would get kicked out of every single place we'd go to, and I just got really sick of that. And I was just like, surely it can't be that expensive to hire a venue just to park cars. Like, it's not a complicated thing. Turns out it's a complicated thing, especially because of the insurance, and rent as well. So at that point, I really had to be like, well, I can't pay these thousands and thousands of dollars out of my own pocket. I don't have that money. So I asked people to chuck in, like $2 each or whatever it was. And that kind of covered expenses, and it just kept growing and growing and growing. So I had to like hire a venue, and we ended up going to Rockley Showgrounds. We were there for actually, we were there for many years until essentially the Oxley Traffic Police became what they are, shall we say, and ruined it all.
I recall that showdown.
Yeah. And I mean, I sort of tried my best to be helpful.
You were very diplomatic. I actually remember that vividly.
But yeah, I mean, I guess there's only so much you can do, and the cops will do what they want to do.
Absolutely. And look, it is, there's always a few that spoil it for everyone. And I do remember, a couple of people making very poor decisions that reflect very badly on the rest of the community.
Yep.
And I must say, I think you've been instrumental in helping to change some of that mentality, where there is more of a group saying, don't be an idiot. You'll ruin it for everyone. I have watched that get better, because it used to be a serious problem.
It used to be much worse. It used to be much, much worse. I guess I tried to sort of be the meat in the sandwich between the police, who are just like, any car enthusiast, we're just going to shut it down because that's what they all do, versus, the community, who are like, skids are cool. Sure, but there's a time and a place, and a meeting's not that. No. That's a difficult message to get through to like 1,000 people. And
like, I'm down with you. Skids are awesome, but like, that's why we're very lucky to have wonderful racetrack facilities and skid pans and
sure, exactly,
cool things. And,
exactly.
You also run events there, oddly enough.
Yeah, so, yeah, not skids events, but yeah.
No, but back in the good old days, there was the figure 8 track, which I enjoyed. I must say, I did take my road car to one of those. So.
Yeah. Over the years, we've expanded into a few different things and events down in Sydney and Melbourne, and running the show and shine for World Time Attack.
Because that was massive as well. I remember I've been to some of those.
All of those have been huge. I mean, World Time Attack Challenge is, I guess, pretty well known on the calendar, and it's one of the bigger automotive events in the Australian calendar. And we've been fortunate enough to be asked to do the show and shine for that, and we've done that, I believe, 4 years now. Yeah,
because that's pretty special, and that's gearing up to be another big one this year too.
That's very cool. That's a very, very cool event. Definitely. Yeah.
So we'll get you back to Australia for that one too.
Probably. No. I mean, look, now that I think travel is back to normal, and ticket prices are back to normal, I'm planning on coming back a lot more often than I was gone for a year and a half, just gone. So a lot more often than that.
And see, and I feel like we're jumping around here, and we'll probably get back to that. But your involvement in Downshift obviously grew over the years. Do you want to talk me through, I guess, the commercialization of that and how that changed?
I mean, I guess you've sort of heard like maybe most of that, in terms of I had to like hire a venue, and I had to like pay all of these costs that are involved in that, and therefore I asked people to make a contribution, and when more and more people turned up, more people made a contribution, and therefore that generated the commercial return to be able to pay for all of the things, and then get new venues and do various other things like have a DJ and do like food and merch and all of those things. And I mean, essentially, it's still that now in terms of what we do at sort of like the normal street meets. We essentially just give people a place to enjoy their cars, and we keep it very, very simple and low key. Essentially, it's just a venue, some music, and some light entertainment and food. That's it. I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel. It's not rocket science, but I think car enthusiasts, as like people who are into cars, need a place to be able to gather without being hassled by anyone, security, police, whatever. I mean, it's legitimate interests that people have. And to be honest with you, I think in Australia, especially for young men, if you don't have a specific hobby, cars are kind of like the default thing that you go into. And I think it's wonderful that kids, especially young males, have something that they can, I guess, invest their time and energy into, and have something that allows them to become part of a community and make friends. Almost like there's an excuse for me to talk to you as a young male because we have the same car, or because I like your wheels, or whatever it is. It gives you an excuse to talk to people, and I think it kind of creates that ability that's, I think, maybe more positive than like you going out and getting drunk, for example, or like drinking is kind of like the social lubricant, versus a shared passion in vehicles is a social lubricant. So
I think that's a really valid point, because I laugh and I think back, like, when I was a young bloke, we'd all get together in my mate's backyard, whoever had the biggest backyard and the most tools.
Yeah.
And, we'd be there working on things, and
or even just shooting the shit,
and just and mate, just talking cars, because it is one of the great connectors of, like if you're a car person, if you dig it, it doesn't matter generally, age,
irrelevant. Exactly.
Where your
age, income status, location.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Like if you dig.
Yep.
And I've seen that all over the world, and I'm sure you have too. Like wherever you go, if you're down with, car scene, car culture. And I mean, how have you seen? Because I mean, you really have been intimately involved. I mean, how have you seen car culture evolve over that time?
I think there's been a shift, obviously, away from forums and then into Facebook and then into Instagram and now into things like TikTok and various other things. I think a lot of those things have not necessarily been beneficial. I think there's a lot of attention seeking. I think there's a lot of elitism, which frustrates me incredibly. Because, I mean, at the core of it, for me, it's what I was just talking about, is that, like, this is a way for people to get together. This is not a way for us to exclude people or to become part of it, like a cool kids club, because you've got enough money to build a cool car, and if you don't have that, you're not cool and you're excluded. I think that kind of goes against what this thing is really at its core, is a way for people to have a shared passion and to connect. It's that's the opposite of that. And so that's been really frustrating for me over a number of years. But I think that kind of clout seeking that happens on social media, on especially like Instagram and TikTok, I don't dig that.
And I even saw that because you guys ran an event on Friday, and I saw people bagging out unmodified cars.
I saw that too, and that really frustrates me, actually, because I'll give you an example. I was just messaging someone about this yesterday who sent me that TikTok to our page, to our Facebook page, and like, the event is a meet. It's not a show. It's a meet for everyone to be able to come in and enjoy the thing that they're passionate about together. B, I had a girl message me. She said, "Hey, this is my stage here. Did you see anyone take any photos of it? Do you have any photos of it?" And I said, "Oh no, have a look in the thread, in the Facebook event, and on the Instagram and everything. People are posting lots of stuff, and hashtagging downshift and all of that." But the TikTok, essentially, that was like ripping apart like people having normal cars, and why do we allow them to park with us? If I said to this girl, "Your car sucks," I don't have any footage of it because your car sucks. that would break her heart, and she'd probably never come back to the car scene. And like, why would we do that? Why would anyone do that? I get it that you want to see cool cars. Absolutely, I want to see cool cars too. I'm all about that. So we have a small VIP section with maybe a couple of dozen cars that are the cream of the cream, the cream of the crop. But we're not about excluding people. We're not about like who are we to judge someone's first car who was just getting into that to say, no, your car's not good enough to come and hang out with us or to be at this event. I think that's just not cool for me.
Amen.
And like, I mean, and the other thing is, like, I have to look back on this thing, and like, my first car was an Excel. Maybe not so cool. Who cares? Like, it's not really about that. Like, I one of my first modifications was painting the door handles the body color. It doesn't matter where you start. The point is, you're passionate about this thing. You're enjoying this thing. Let people enjoy things, even if it's not your cup of tea, even if it doesn't measure up to your lofty goals of whatever they are. Maybe you start off with a Pulsar and no one's going to rip you apart for that because you've got friends who are into cars and maybe you just enjoy these things. Or let people enjoy things. You don't need to be elitist about it just because someone has less money or whatever compared to you.
Can I share something positive with you? I had Tyler and Alex were my last guests on last year, and they actually run this little meet. And man, it's literally like just bring whatever crap box you drive.
Yeah.
And what I have really enjoyed about that is people bring their project that they just bought.
Yeah.
And like, it's not working, it's leaking, something's broken, there's like crap everywhere.
Well, that's where it starts.
And the paint's no good.
Yeah.
And like, but like there was an 80s Sora, but like one of the really, and I'm like, that is sick. And it had, like velour interior.
Oh yeah, the
like,
velour interior.
Yeah. And there's like unmodified Cressida. Like,
yeah.
I dig that so much.
Yeah.
And I embrace what you're doing where, as you said, it's a meet. It's not a show and show. Like, it's not, we're not going for the grand champion here.
Yeah.
You just want to get people together.
Yep.
And why is that?
Exactly.
Why is that so hard?
Yeah. I mean, it's not that it's hard. Like we do it every month, right? But yeah, I mean, we cop a lot of hate online and even from people that whose opinion I care about the fact that like we put on meets and we allow just any old person in. Yeah, that's right. That's the point. It's a car meet. We allow anyone in. That's the point.
Yeah. Be a good human. That's it.
Trying. Yeah.
Man, so simple. I think that's the thing is I had, when I was a younger man, I wanted flashy cars. And I've owned some nicer things and I've enjoyed a lot of nice things over the years. And what I've come to discover is they're great, but they're also a nightmare. Like driving that stuff
is scary.
It's man, stressful. And like people stare at you and like it's really weird. If you're driving a Ferrari through Brisbane, like people are just like you're sitting there chatting to whoever's in the car with you, and then you realize that people are like
people are
staring at you, and it's super weird. Like it's a really weird feeling. And I actually found it like not very nice.
Yeah.
And I also found like, cruising around in nice things. I'm like, okay, this is great, but like, who cares? And I think that's, I've probably been fortunate to have the opportunity to enjoy that. But I actually came to discover that what I really like is actually
just Falcon,
mate, crap old cars. Because do you know how fun crap old cars are? I think about all the cars that I've enjoyed over the years. And so I was working for BMW at the time. I owned a long wheelbase 7 Series, which I just thought was like the greatest car I'd ever owned. And I YOLO'd out of that job, quit it, sold everything, and I bought a 1989 Corolla for $1,000. And look, the freedom of owning a car that only cost $1,000.
You're not worried about anything.
Mate, you're not worried about anything. You don't have to lock it. Like, it's so crap that no one's ever going to touch it.
Yep.
And if you get a ding in the door, you don't notice because there's so many dings in the door that they just blend in. And there was a surprising freedom to that.
There is definitely.
Like a real freedom. Whereas like, I remember like almost being brought to tears when I get a new scratch or the leather gets busted. I'm like, this just sucks. And then the magical moment was I bought that car for $1,000, drove it for a year, and then I sold it for $2,000. And I'm like, what? Whereas all the expensive cars I've ever bought just went backwards.
Depreciated.
Oh, mate, I like did did myself over and over again, just
Yep.
like lost so much money. And then I went, hang on, you can buy a crap car, not look after it, and then make money on it. I'm like, this goes against everything I've ever been told.
You're a car dealer in your next life. Used car dealer in your
Oh,
next
but
life.
see, only shit boxes, like just the trashest cars.
Yeah.
And I've got a VE Commodore Ute now that I paid $1,500 for, and I bought it off one of my clients. It's got 385,000 kilometers on it, and like, it's just the abuse that car has suffered, and it just loves it, and it keeps going, and it makes me so happy.
But even if it doesn't, the wreckers will still give you $500 for it.
Mate, I've had people offer me like $7,000 for it, and I think it's worth more now.
Wow. I guess during COVID, all
disgusting
the prices
amount of money.
Yeah, all the prices have gone wild.
Yeah.
Asset appreciation.
Asset appreciation.
So,
but no, mate, shitboxes is where it's at. So, like, for anyone that, wants a Ferrari, you're wrong. My accountant said to me, he said, the day will come where you'll be able to afford one of those things, and then you won't want to buy it because it's such a bad investment of your money. And he was right. Whereas at least if you buy old stuff, they're just going up.
Well, I guess it depends on what you're buying, because
it does.
A
few
lot
of
of
them
those
have actually gone
limited
really well.
edition things have definitely gone up in value.
Yeah, that market's actually changed quite a lot. I'm surprised at how much
it's super weird.
Yeah, because it used to, like, nobody. I remember you could buy a Di Tommaso Pantera for like $10,000, and everyone was like, "What a crappy car!" And now they've just gone, pew,
like a couple of $100,000.
Oh man, like stupid money. Whereas like you'd go to a meet 15, 20 years ago, and people would like kind of snicker, like, can't afford a Lambo, poor. Yeah. Whereas now, like, they're like, oh, that's sick, rear engine V8. That's amazing. Like they've been, I guess, recognized as an asset, which has brought a lot of money and a lot of speculation in that probably wasn't there before. Because I've seen people, I'm car vesting, I'm investing in money, like, yeah. I know I'm not allowed to judge, but I'm judging. But I think it's why I appreciate people that are just into it, just down with it, just love it. Like, and I think that's what I really enjoy about you and what you do and what you bring to it is how it's all just, it's for the people.
Tried to do that, yes.
Now, something else we have to explore is you don't live in Australia full time anymore, or partially, or a little bit, or
at all, really. So basically, at the end of 2015, I did quite a bit of travel in sort of like my early 20s, especially around Southeast Asia, and I really enjoyed the kind of different vibe that it has, and the cuisine, like the fact that people are friendly, the fact that it's very easy to rent a motorbike and ride around and explore, and weather's great. It's very cheap. It's very, very cheap. Not as cheap now as it used to be, but especially in the big capital cities. But certainly in comparison to Australia, it's very cheap. Street food, amazing. So I enjoyed all of these things when I was traveling around, and I guess I had within me sort of this drive to, at least once in my life, try moving somewhere where I didn't know anyone, I couldn't speak the language, sink or swim, figure it out. And the three choices that I had were Vietnam, Philippines, or Thailand. So the capital cities of each, I'm kind of like more of like a city person as opposed to like a countryside person. So it was essentially, it was Bangkok, Thailand, Ho Chi Minh City or Saigon, Vietnam, or Manila, Philippines. And out of those three, for various reasons, I picked Saigon, Vietnam. And at the end of 2015, I moved there, and basically like a suitcase of stuff. And yeah, I started, I moved over there, and like I met a bunch of people, and I ended up meeting a friend who was doing events at the time, and she said she's got some contacts that she wanted to introduce me to. And so anyway, I got introduced to a general manager of a hotel on the outskirts of the CBD. And I talked him into letting us use his pool at the hotel to run pool parties. And so I did that for a year. So I started running pool parties in Saigon, and I did that for a year, which was an interesting experience, shall we say. And actually, even that was kind of like a similar sort of idea as to what we've been talking about in terms of give people a place to go, give people a place to like hang out and have fun. And we had like the DJ and all of those things. Anyway, so I did that for about a year, and that was starting to do better. I like that in a similar sort of way to the downshift story that we were talking about just previously. that sort of started gathering a bit of momentum. But unfortunately, because of the commercial implications and various painful experiences working with local business partners as well as the hotel, I just said, "Hey, this isn't fun for me anymore. It's not making tons of money to make it worthwhile to deal with the BS and the corruption and the police hassling us and various things like that." And I just said, "No, I don't want to do this." So I shut it down after a year. But yeah, I mean, there were some fun times there. A lot of people enjoy that. Yeah. So yeah, pool parties in Vietnam. And then I ended up working on a few different projects. I was doing Airbnb experiences for a little while. I was like showing people around and sort of showing them some hidden spots in Saigon. So that was fun. I also worked on a water filtration project with a very good friend of mine, who essentially he invented a water filtration system that could be built sort of fairly cheaply. That involved sort of like centrifugal force, essentially throwing particulates out towards the edge of these long PVC tubes, and then using a filter at the end to basically filter out everything except it couldn't do salt and it couldn't do heavy metals, but like every other like particulate matter basically was filtered out of it. And the machines cost sort of like they're very economical for how much throughput, for how much clean water you could get out of it. So I was working on that for a while as well. We ended up installing some of those out in the countryside in Vietnam where they didn't have like filtered and treated water. So that was kind of cool. And throughout all of this, Downshift continued running, and I've been privileged to have some incredible guys and a lady as well, who ran the events for me in my absence. And so I'd sort of be the social media aspect of things. I would set up the events and the flyers, like the graphic design of the flyers and things like that, and do the advertising and all of those things, the posting, and then the actual physical running of the events would be done by my team here. And I guess I'd be behind the scenes, sort of trying to help in whatever way I can from somewhere else, while I'm sort of doing other things with my life that I also want to do. So yeah, and then obviously during COVID we had a break, and I sort of started a side hustle, renting out vehicles for people who needed to move house and things like that. So yeah, all sorts of weird things. And now that I'm heading back to Vietnam shortly, I'm looking at doing the Airbnb experiences again, but basically doing like sunset boat tours through the city, through Saigon. So
nice.
That's something that I enjoy. So like I want other people to enjoy this thing as well.
And I must say I have watched with great envy some of your moped tours that you've done with some of your buddies.
I would highly recommend that to all of our viewers. If you don't know how to ride a moped, learn how to ride a moped. It's very simple, very, very simple. And as soon as you're out of the city, it's amazing. The scenery that rolls by you, the freedom that you have is just next level. It's literally, freedom is a wallet with some cash in it and a moped full of fuel in anywhere in Southeast Asia. And it's like you literally need nothing else other than that. There's food everywhere, there's accommodation everywhere, there's beautiful roads and scenery and friendly people and drinking and whatever you want.
Really?
Yeah.
So you don't even need to carry stuff with you as such. Like
maybe some clothes in a backpack if you want. Like that'd be plenty.
Yeah, so little
backpack,
little overnight bag type thing.
That's usually all I have. A backpack. I just jam some shorts in there, something to swim in, a couple of t-shirts. That's it.
How many days would you sort of go out for one of those?
I mean, I've done sort of long weekends with my good friend Lewis. We've done sort of like a Friday night to Sunday night one, where we would fly out of Saigon to a regional city, rent a motorbike there, ride around for 2 or 3 days, and then fly back. So he does teaching at a big international company, English teaching in Saigon. So he sort of works the Monday to Friday thing. He can knock off a few hours early on a Friday. So we try and get out of Saigon as soon as possible, and then basically spend the next 2 days riding through the countryside. So I've done anything from that sort of small trip, all the way up to a 3-week tour around the biggest island in the Philippines called Luzon with Sharpie on dirt bikes. And that was, 3 weeks. is that's a pretty long time to be on the road constantly on the go. But I mean, that was still an amazing trip, you know. And Philippines is a slightly different flavor, slightly different feel, slightly different scenery, culturally very, very different to Vietnam. And then I've also done some other ones in Borneo, in Malaysia, in Cambodia, and Burma with my brothers. I've got two half brothers who are older than me, so I dragged them to Burma, to Myanmar. This is actually, they were having their first democratic elections ever at the time, and so that was an interesting trip. The country had basically just fairly recently before that opened, and now it's sort of not open again. So I think we picked the correct time to slot in there real quick and explore the country.
Because if I'm doing my math correctly, what's that? 7 years, sort of going into 8 years now in Vietnam. Is that like, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it's probably about 5 years in total that I've spent there, because I was also stuck in Australia with COVID for a year and a half, with the government not allowing me to leave. I had to apply 4 times, like, you know, put in an application to Home Affairs or whatever it's called, immigration, to be permitted to leave prison Australia. Anyway, so
yeah, that was a very confusing time.
Mm.
I think we're all still confused because of that.
Yeah, that was definitely a weird time. I'm gonna look back on that and talk to my nephews and be like, this one time when I was a young boy,
we were trapped.
We were trapped.
What kept you in Vietnam? What is it that keeps drawing you there?
I mean, it's as I said, it's all of the same sort of attractions that I was mentioning. You know, it's very, very cheap to live there. I feel incredibly free, and the food is amazing. The people are friendly. I've got a great group of friends. Travel anywhere in Asia is incredibly easy and close by. It encourages me to travel more. I like that. You know, Australia, like, physically, it's at the bottom of the world, you know, so it's traveling anywhere from here is not an easy thing unless you're going to New Zealand or Bali. But then anything further than that, you know, is an 8-hour flight, like Singapore or KL, which are kind of like the gateways. That's an 8-hour flight, plus then the layover, plus then wherever you want to go. America, I can't remember how long it is, but it's like a 14-hour flight or something. Like, it's far away and it's expensive. Whereas in comparison, I can get return flights to Korea or Japan for like $500. And it's usually an overnight flight, so it's real convenient. You know, you sleep on the plane and then you're there in the morning. Anything within Southeast Asia is like $50 to $100 each way. It's nice.
That's just annoying.
I'd rather fly to, like, you know, Bangkok or Hanoi or
come on, Singapore, mate. You can spend $700 and fly to Melbourne from Brisbane.
Yeah,
it's
great.
A bargain, and then your plane won't take off or it'll fly home. And what's next? So
back to Vietnam tomorrow, and yeah, I think I want to try this sunset boat tour thing. I think now that tourism is returning back to normal, I think there'd be enough people who'd be interested in doing it to actually make it viable. Plus, it's cool. Most importantly, for my birthday last year, I took out a bunch of my friends and we had 3 small fishing boats, and I put a big karaoke speaker like this on the front of one of them and blasted it, and, you know, we had a great time, and we had lots of vodka and beers and music and sunset on the river. It was great.
I'm sold. That's good times right there. and with Downshift, what's the trajectory there? What can you sort of see in the future?
I'm pretty happy to keep it the way it is, to be honest. I think that we're still giving value to people. I think we still get, like, the core of why I started running the events, like, that's still the same. You know, we're still giving people, like, a place to go and enjoy the thing that they enjoy. So I'd like to keep doing that. I think that is needed. I think that people, I mean, with the amount of people that turn up, clearly they want it. So why would you shut it down? Why wouldn't you keep it running if it's not an unreasonable burden? And I mean, with Richard, who's currently running them, it's not an unreasonable burden. It's totally fine, and he's enjoying it. And I think the people who turn up enjoy it. Aside from the sort of negativity on some on TikTok especially, but sometimes on social media, we always get bulk great feedback to be like, thank you so much for putting this on, for giving us somewhere to go, essentially. So I think it would be not a good idea to shut it down just because I don't happen to be in the country. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's become something bigger, hasn't it? I think that's really nice. Like and it's lovely that I guess it has always stayed true, and the plan is to continue to stay true. Because I mean, what sort of numbers? Like, how many cars do you have come through on Friday? Broadly,
I haven't done the numbers yet, but probably 1,000, I would guess.
Whoa.
Yeah. I mean, Beanley Showgrounds was full. It was full.
So hang on, 1,000 people or 1,000 cars? Like
1,000 cars.
1,000 cars.
Yeah. Maybe a little bit less. Like I said, I haven't done the numbers yet, but
whoa,
it's a lot. It's a lot of people. It's a lot of cars. And so we had the dyno as well, and that was really attractive. We were like parking. We were trying to do the parking to like fit as many people physically in as possible. But it's when you've got numbers like that, it's very, very challenging. And like a lot of venues can't fit those sort of numbers either, so that also makes it tough.
That's wild. Because I couldn't make it on Friday night. I had somewhere to, yeah.
That's okay. No
but
problem.
I was really keen to sort of see how it all went.
But you've been to them before anyway.
Mate, I certainly have. I've still got one of the OG key rings as well. I'm still can't get over those sort of numbers. Matty, I don't want to keep you too much longer.
That's all right.
I'm just really stoked. And, Matty's given me, an hour of his time here because like literally in country for 7 days. And you sort of message, I hit him up over Instagram and I'm like, dude, will you come on the show? And he's like, when are we going to do this? Because, he's on a plane tomorrow. But, buddy, thanks for coming and talking to me today.
No, my pleasure.
Yeah, it was just awesome.
Happy that I could share some of the story.
Yeah.
Hopefully there's some value in it for the listeners or viewers.
Man, it's a wild story, and it's I don't know, there's a lot of takeaways for me. As I sort of said to you before we started rolling here, like the thing I enjoy is people who decide to take life in a direction.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, there's obviously this all sounds great. There's also downsides to it as well. So
man, sucks balls. Like there's big chunks of it that are terrible. And I will never sugarcoat that. Like there's no,
there's been difficulties in the journey. Let's put it like that.
Oh yeah. Anyone that actually makes something of themselves, the reason it's hard to make something of yourself is because most of it sucks. Like it's a lot of pushing things uphill.
There's a lot of pushing things uphill. Yes.
Yeah. I've run headfirst into the fire more times than I can remember, and I have been beaten to a bloody pulp, which is probably what keeps me humble because I know that I'm just an idiot that just keeps trying.
Still here,
still here, still going. Proudly wearing Crocs and board shorts to work on a Monday, and to me,
you're winning.
That's winning. Like anytime I go into town, I roll through the CBD and I see people like,
it is nice to wear a suit sometimes.
Look, it is, but I'm not down with it anymore. I used to think it was so cool, and now I'm like, nah, man. Success is Crocs and shorts,
Crocs and board shorts.
Mate, midweek when you're like. Because I had to get some new ones because my wife actually showed me the little lights you can put on these. Have you seen those? No. So you can get a set of headlights for them.
Of course you can.
And I've actually also seen you can get like full aftermarket mods for them. You can get like I've seen winches and spotties and
what
like
a business
stuff that you can like clip onto your Crocs.
What a business for someone who's passionate about Crocs. That's a business.
And I'm like, this is so bad. Great. It's good. I'm like,
have you seen? I've actually seen. I think videos or photos somewhere where you can put Crocs on your Crocs. So they're like tiny little Crocs.
How do I not have these?
To the top of the Crocs?
And I mean, they're just great because you can switch them into 4-wheel drive. You can flip the thing down at the back, and
that's okay.
And
that's
the
low
real
range, is it?
Yeah, that's your low range. And the real breakthrough is the shopping trolley experience because obviously, you're a man rocking a pair of thongs. When you clock your foot into the trolley wheel, and you like absolutely bust your toe. Mate, the Croc security, you can crash into that trolley wheel as hard as you like, mate, no damage.
Wow. All right. You've half convinced me.
It's that in particular. It's the excruciating pain of the shopping trolley that has really helped to push me over.
Just the important things.
On that note, Matty, thanks for coming in to chat with me today. I'm going to sign it off.
No worries. My
Let you
pleasure.
get on to bigger and better things. Well, thanks for listening. I'll catch you again next time. Wind it out.